let me just make sure that worked. Yeah, okay. So today's tutorial is mostly on files, so file operations. And mainly that means we're talking about, reading file input and writing file output. So I'm going to just jump right into it. There's going to be probably some time at the end for any questions you have about the assignments. I released, last night, assignments 9 and 10. So those are going to be available for you as well, if you haven't already noticed. And so feel free to take a look. So without further ado, I'm going to screen share here. And we can go through the first problem. So we have this file here. It's an input file. Okay, and it's just a text file with this, like, I guess it's like, and there's some words used for a poem. Anyways, so we have this like rhyming whatever, and the problem asks us to write an algorithm. To read the file and prepend line numbers. Okay, followed by tab character to the string, and write into a second file. So basically, here's what we want to do. Right, we want to read this file. We want to go line by line. We want to do 1 tab, 2 tab, right? That's all. It's not too bad, and so on, right? So this seems manageable, right? So let's do that. Let's write this function now. Yeah, sure. Let's just call it add line numbers. And actually, let's try to make this a general function. So instead of just looking for the limerick file, let's make it so that you could provide any file name. So let's do this. So essentially what we want is we want file name, and then by default, we'll say limerick.txt. That way, it passes our test case, I suppose. And so then what are we going to do in here? Well, first thing we want to do is we want to read the file input. So the best way to, we have this open function in Python, and what we can of course do is say file equals to open file name, but then we're going to have to put file.close later, which is fine, and we can do this, and we're going to have to put, and then we can put all of our like processing in here. So we do like file.readline, and that is a perfectly fine way. So I'll actually show us how to do it. Let's do it this way first. So what we can do, right, is we can say while file dot yeah, we'll have to do it this way. Okay, so line equals file.readline, and we can say while file.readline. So let's think. If there's no future lines, right, we want to just read till the end of the file. So if we don't know what it is, what we could actually just do is, well, we would basically, while type of line should always be string, right? Because if it's none, then it would be a different type. And while length of line, right, we don't want an empty line, is greater than 0. Right. So this will read us to the end of the file. Now, it assumes that we don't have anything like this, but I think that's a fair assumption. We see our input file. So assuming that this is correct, and that way, if there's this, it won't read this last line. And so all we want to do now is, and we'll need a counter as well, starting at 1, right, is say, and then let's do a second thing now. And then we want an output parameter here, which we can make limerick, right? Do out file. And then in here, we're going to want to say out file dot write line. In this case, I think it wants from us it wants us a list. So what we want to do is just do a list of one line, and we can say and then so what have I done here, right? So essentially, we want here a counter, right? And we want that to be for the first, like the actual line number. And so all we need to do is increment the counter after each time we add a line, and this will work quite effectively. Then we want to add a tab character, which is just backslash t. That's how you write a tab. If you do tab here, actually this would also work, I think. When I do tab, it actually converts it to spaces. So to do a tab, we want backslash t. And then this is just the content of the original line. And that will should produce desired results. So then we're also going to need to now read the next line. So let's do this. So it is in a while loop. And then when we're done that, all we will need to do now is do file.close outfile.close. This is a long function for what seemed like a very simple task. But let's just let's make sure it works, right? So let's run this. Oh, and we need to actually call the function add line number. Okay. Right. Yes, I didn't do this right. That to specify what you're doing, like what behavior you want. And so when you do this, this is saying read, and this is saying write. And so now, I think I know why. Okay. That's weird. Did not work. Hold on. Let me see what I can do here. I'm just searching for that. Interesting. Surprised that didn't work, I have to be honest. So that's pretty weird. Oh, no, it did. It just took a long time to show up. That's funny. Okay, so it does exist. It just, I don't know why. PyCharm wasn't showing it. And so this actually does what we want, right? We can check that it's a tab character because there's only one. When I do left, right here, it's jumping. And because they're aligned perfectly like that. So even if I had a 10 here, it would work properly. Like if we just copy this, now there should be 10 lines. If I run the same thing, now I open this file again. You can see that even though this is a character longer, the tab character has just become shorter, right? And as a result, it's still correct. But what we can do is we can actually write this a lot cleaner using this with syntax. So this is the unpleasant syntax. How can we do this more cleanly? And I strongly suggest doing it this way. So what we're going to do, first thing, we're going to use this with keyword, and we want the content, right? So we can just get straight to the file content. So we can say with open file name for reading as, we'll just say file, right? Because, and so what this is doing is this is essentially setting file, it's this line here, except that instead of having to call the file.close ourselves, it'll do it for us. And so all we can do is we can just read the whole file, read all of it, and say content equals this. And since we know that it's just basically split by new lines, we can accomplish the same effect by just splitting it by new line. You can also just do it with split lines, but sure, let's do that. I've never heard that one. And we want to keep the ends, so that's a true. And basically, why do we want to keep the ends? Because we want, here on every line, there's this \n. And when we copy it over here, we still want to keep the \n at the end, so we should keep the end. It really doesn't matter. We could add it back later, but it's just easier this way. Okay, so this will give us a list of all the lines as we want it, right? And it will set it to content. Okay, so now we should stop indenting here, because then it will immediately call file.close. Now you could do everything within the with block, but I strongly advise against it, because sometimes when you use files, basically things can happen while you have the file open that can cause your code to behave incorrectly, and also can cause errors that will crash your program or corrupt the file. And you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So we believe generally in programming in this theory of what's called atomic operations. And basically what that means is they should be as quick and self-contained as possible. So when you do write to an external file, what you want to do, you want to open it, get your data, and close it immediately. And that way, if someone else writes to it or modifies it or anything like that, they're able to do so without issue. And so that's our goal here. So when we do this, all we're going to do, we're going to open it, read the file, close it again. And it will do that automatically for us, right? So that's good. That's really good, right? Because this is basically what it's doing, is calling file.close right here. And we want that. So then we can kind of do the same thing, except we can now use a for loop. And we can simply write I should do it this way. And as a short explanation, right, same thing I was doing before with the for line, but this way I'm doing the len range because because I need here the line number, and the line number doesn't start at 0, it starts at 1, hence I plus 1 all the time. And then we can once again do with open output, and we can do that as write as file, and once again we can use that because these will destroy the variable as well. Well, actually, I'm not sure about that, but anyways. And then we can say file.write lines outlines. Okay. Now, this will actually have a not desired effect, but I think, but we can show that. What I want to note here is you can see how this is much, much cleaner than this. Why? Well, primarily because we've split this up into 3 steps, which are generally true. Read input, process input, create output, and then write output. And, you know, that's a really clean and easy way to divide up your program, right? That makes it a lot easier to handle this file stuff. So now if we try this, I suspect that's what's going to happen, as we'll see in one moment. Yeah, no, that's not correct, buddy. Sorry, let me tell it to reread from disk. Reload from disk. Okay, let's try this. Let's just delete it and try it. I'm really confused why that did that, but let's just try this one more time. And just for good measure, let's add a print done here. Ah. Oh, I know why. Oops. Never fails. Okay. So now we actually are calling the function like we want to. And so let's So this works properly, actually. I'm surprised. What I was concerned about was that write lines would add another line here, but I guess it's not doing that because the line is already existing. So it's smart. It's a smart function. So this is perfect. And this is way cleaner. I'm sure you would agree. Right? Very straightforward. As for the F string, I don't know if Sarth has taught this to you guys. Basically, it's equivalent of if I had done this. Right. And so what an F string does is when you put F before the quotation marks like that, it basically signifies that anything in between two braces like this should be evaluated as a Python expression and then converted to string automatically. So it just does that for you. It's quite convenient. It's also similar to this. Dot format. Which is the other way of doing that. And you know what? In this case, is probably cleaner, actually. Okay. Does that make sense, everyone? Any questions about this so far? All right. Looks like not. Sweet. So let's continue on then. So next problem. Gets a little tougher now, but still pretty good. And this is a case where it'll actually become really useful for us to utilize this kind of read process output kind of thing. Okay. So let's do this. So first things first, we're dealing with this sillywords.csv. So let's look at the file. So this file has these 4 columns here: name, usage, rating, royal assent. And we can see the first one is some like very odd excuse for for some words, I guess. Then usage is some integer, rating is another integer, and royal assent is a Boolean. Okay, so great. So let's look at what these are now. So name, usage, rating, royal assent. Okay, excellent. And so what it wants us to do is, this is a word, the number of times a word has been used by a British comedian, a score of from 0 to 100 of how silly it's considered, and whether or not the queen thinks it's funny. Okay, so write a Python function which selects a single funniest word from the file and returns just that word in string form. The process to determine the funniest word is as follows. A word is not funny unless the queen thinks it's funny. To calculate the score, so let's do this. Let's start off with reading it out. Let's start by reading it. So we have to write funniest word. And we can once again do file name equals to silly words. Now it doesn't have to be this way. Now let me start off with this. There are actually much better, cleaner ways of reading CSV files, but I want to show you guys the most rudimentary way, using it exactly the same way. Let me just double check actually in the lesson plan. That's how he wanted me to do it, but I do believe that is the case, and either way, I think it's the best way. 1 second, guys. Okay, that's actually not. Okay, that's fine. That's chill. So I'm gonna do it the way he wants, actually. So, I'll do it this way. Then I'll change it up. I mean, that's how I like to do things. So, okay, so in the status quo, right? What we want to do, using the same procedure we just used, is let's process this from bare nothing, right? So first things first, let's actually open it. Right? We can do content equals to file.read. Now I'm going to continue processing, but I'm going to do that outside of this with statement because, like I said, I want to close the file as quickly as possible. And I really mean that. Okay, so now, what do we notice? Let's look at the formatting. So the first line can already be removed, right? And so we could even, yeah, okay, sure. So then, and actually let's do read lines. Then, and let's just see what that actually outputs, because I'm not 100% sure. So, and this is a really useful thing to be able to do, is see what things output. So let's run this. Okay, great. So includes the dot \n. Oh, there's also lead dot split lines, but this is probably a better way. And then keep ends will do false, because we don't want the \n anymore. We just want true, blah, blah, blah. So let's try this now. Excellent, much better. So this is going to give us these things. And what we can do now, right, is we can loop through, or what are we going to call them? Words. Let's make these dictionaries. Okay, so let's turn each one of these into a dictionary. So then we can say for line in content, but we can remove the first because this, we don't want to count this, because this will not match the specification. So we're going to do 1 to the end, right? And then what we want is to say words dot append a dictionary, which will contain. Oh, actually, first we want to do, I guess, let's do line dot split, right? And we want to split by comma now. That way we have it in 4, so pieces, we can call it that. And then we can say that the name is PCS0, usage PCS1, and rating is going to be PCS2. And finally, royal assent, which I'm just going to shorten to assent, is PCS3. And there's a few things we're actually doing efficiently here, so I'll cover that in a moment. The first thing is, what we can do here actually is we can clean this up a little bit. We can use what's called destructuring. And so what we can actually do is just do this. And it will set these as variables. So now we can say name. And this is just being done positionally. So the first one will become name. The second will become usage. So basically what we're doing here. And this is just cleaner. Right? What else can we do? Well, we actually really, if you think about what we're being asked to do here, don't need to, oops, where is it? Oh, it's at the top of the file. Why don't we see? We actually don't need to create this dictionary at all, because we can actually do this while we're looping through anyways, right? So let's just do that. So instead of doing this word, let's just start here. So now we have these 4 variables for the current word. And so what we can do is we can say if not assent, right? Then we can immediately just go to the next loop. Continue goes to the next loop iteration. Why? Because we have this condition here. Now, one thing I want to point out, this is called returning early, or exiting early. This is really useful because it makes your code cleaner, because then I don't need to indent or think about this anymore. I can just assume at this point, right, which makes it is easier than like what I see from a lot of people, which is like this. And then you have like all your code inside here, and it'll be like 30 lines of code else. And then, you know, you have to go back and find it or whatever. Here I just do if not assent, meaning if, basically, if it's a condition where this is not the word, we can just continue. So then, to calculate the score, multiply the time number. So score equals to number of times a bridge comedian used the word. So that's usage times 5 divided by rating, right? Okay, so if it fails for any reason, great. So we need to do a try catch here. Try this, and if not, exception is brought. It will catch any exception. Then we should just continue because, again, it can't be the funniest word, so let's just move to the next word. Finally, the funniest word is the word with highest score. Great. So let's do this then. Max word, max score is going to be equal to whatever. Let's just do empty and 0. Right? Because we know this will always be above 0. It should be, at least. I don't think, yeah, because there's no negative rating, so it will be. And one thing I'll note, it's 0 to 100, right? So it's most common that this is actually going to be a 0 division error. I mean, that's really what we can say. But the truth is, I don't technically know that, so I'm going to, it's possible there's a string or something in there. So I'd rather not mess around with that. And so we can just do that. And then finally, we can just say if score is greater than max score, max word, max score equals to name and score. And then finally, at the end of the loop, we can return max word. Does this make sense? There is a way to do this using import CSV and then using CSV.reader. So, and I think that's actually how he wanted it to be done. And so basically what we can do is we can use a very similar thing. We read the file in, and then we just use CSV Reader. So I guess I'll show that way as well. Let me just make sure exactly what he wanted. So give me one moment. And please, if you have any questions, don't be shy, just interrupt. So yeah, so for CSV Reader, sure. So for CSV Reader, really, it's a similar thing. In my opinion, not necessarily easier, but essentially, you can just do this here. So you can just say like words equals csv.reader, and we'll need to import. And then we're going to do should be CSV file, no, so just file. And then it will read the file, and then we basically can do the same thing because words will have its different properties, and so we can just like basically loop through it. And would, well, I think just be word, like it's really not a better way. I don't suggest doing it that way. I mean, you can, but really, I think the easiest way, generally speaking, is just, unless it's a really complex CSV file, just do it this way. If you know what the headers are, which you do in this case, just do it this way. Okay, are there any questions about this code or the first question that I did? If not, I'm going to open the floor to general questions and answers. Okay, well, in that case, are there any questions at all in general about anything? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So, yeah, I guess I'm surprised there's been no questions at all the whole tutorial, but I guess that's cool. Oh, I didn't even realize you could do this. Sorry, I just wanted to show this. I just realized that in PyCharm you can go from text for a CSV file to data, and it will show you like this, which I think is pretty cool. And there's probably a way to. Oh no, that didn't work. Hold on. We'll go to data again. I wonder if there's a way to like set this as. Anyways, sorry, I just got excited. But, yeah, I don't think there's anything else that I'm being asked. Oh, is that a question or something? Sure. So, yeah, I think like I don't have much else here. Let me just see if there's any. Oh, no. So in that case, I think you guys are free to go. If you have any questions or things you want me to go over, just stick around and say so. Otherwise, have a good day.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.